Thank you for joining us for today's Ipsos virtual roundtable discussion exploring changing parenting behaviors and how our guest panelists, whom you'll meet shortly, are using insights, diversity, and inclusion as sources of innovation. Throughout today's session, you will remain in listen-only mode. However, throughout the webinar, please submit your questions online using the Q&A feature. Time permitting, we'll answer questions at the end of today's session. However, if time runs short, your question will be answered by email. Today's webinar is also being recorded and will be directly emailed to you. So now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome today's moderator, Janelle James, Senior Vice President with Ipsos UU. Janelle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you everyone for joining us today, especially our esteemed roundtable panelists who are achieving the difficult challenge of connecting with parents and families while the economic, social, and even political landscape continually shifts. We won't belabor the welcome. This is our 13th roundtable in our Innovation, Inclusion, and Insights series, and it's our biggest panel yet. So I think this may be our lucky number 13 if we don't have any tech issues. So let's get started with the panelists and their introductions. Jennifer, do you want to get us started by telling us a little about your role, how it touches parents and families, and maybe a recent project that brings it all to life?
Hi, thanks so much for inviting me and having me here. I'm Jen Kotler. I oversee research, content strategy, and writing for the Kids and Family group at Google. I'm a developmental scientist by training, and I've been in the field of kids and tech for over, and media for over 25 years. I used to work at Sesame Street for a while, Sesame Workshop. And my job at Google is to really help have the greatest experiences we can to kids and families, to kids, teens, and their parents, really grounding what we do in developmental and best interests of children. And a more recent thing that we've been working on, as you know, is Gen AI, and hearing what parents and kids and teens think about the new technology, what they want from it, what are their fears, what are their concerns, and what are the opportunities. And just hearing people think about what all the possibilities are and hearing what families want from it has just been really fun.
Love that. Janine, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm really excited to be here with such wonderful people. My name is Janine Dominguez. I'm a senior clinical psychologist at the Child-Mind Institute and senior director for school and community programs. And really, Child-Mind's mission is transforming children's mental health, and certainly parents are a large role in that mission. And so my work is really around building capacity in communities and with schools, and being able to provide evidence-based mental health, fitness, prevention, treatment, just really creating access to mental health. And one of the projects that I think really highlights our engagement with parents has been in partnership with the state of California, called the Positive Parenting Thriving Kids Project, where we really worked closely with parents around what topics around mental health are most important to them, they're most worried about, and created a 20 video series curriculum to really be able to share with parents and a glide path for other information, so that way we can really support their mental health, their role, in order to be able to support their children. So it was a really rewarding project, and also a free resource, so go to childmind.org for it.
Love that, thank you. Also have never heard of mental health fitness, so love that term and how positive it is. Demetria, do you want to go next?
Thank you so much for having me, Janelle. My name is Demetria Pleasant. I work for Ipsos UU, which is the qualitative side at Ipsos, and I'm so excited to be here today. My whole job at Ipsos is really just to talk with folks and understand and empathize and learn from them as we work with other companies to solve business problems. So a lot of my day-to-day is truly getting into the minds of parents all over the world. And I'll tell you, a most recent project to your question, Janelle, I had the opportunity to talk to parents who were caregivers of children with chronic illnesses. And in those conversations, sometimes the kids were with them and they would laugh together about experiences that they've had. They would cry together, they would argue a bit, but you've really got to understand, what worries them, what are they excited by, what are they hopeful for, and just put yourself in their shoes. So I love my job. I love this opportunity to talk to parents, and I'm so glad to have that ability to be able to do that here at Ipsos. I've been in market research for 20 years, and I'm a mom of 2 boys. They are 8 and 9, and I'm tired. I'm just tired all the time. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
No, of course. So glad you're here. And now that we're done with all the J's, Michael, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure, and thanks for having me. And Janitra, I appreciate your honesty and I've got 2 kids. I'll start there. I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old. I spent all day Sunday on a horse show, and I'm exhausted, but glad to be here. I am the Global Marketing Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Lead at Google. And my core job is really thinking about how I work with the various marketing teams within Google to think about how we are accurately, authentically representing our users in our products, in our features, in the campaigns and activations that we build. And so really pushing on our team to move past stereotypes, working with agencies to think about how do they move past really lazy stereotypes that have been a hallmark of a lot of marketing for a lot of years, probably far too many. And a recent project that I've been working on, I built a training pre-pandemic that we're now bringing back post-pandemic. It's an IRL training, but it really depends on relies on multimodalities to hack the hearts and minds of leaders so they can show up differently for the folks in their world. We built it for leaders of teams, but we find that so many parents are coming away from it thinking about, how do I show up better for my kids? How do I make connections with little humans that I am around every day that have lasting impact both on them and the relationships that we're trying to build?
Absolutely love that, and how it connects the workplace and the marketplace. Phenomenal. Rich, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you again for inviting me to this panel. My name is Rich Williams. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Senior Director of Consumer Insights at Sesame Workshop, where I pretty much make sure that, we're capturing our audience from a child perspective and a parent perspective across all of our multiple touch points. So not just television, not just digital, but also in person, websites, et cetera, making sure that, we are essentially where, kids and families are. So, that's, and making sure that that information is being used to make, strategic decisions, distribution deals, et cetera. So really integral part of just like our overall operations. And I would say a project that I'm really excited and really proud that I worked on recently is I'm starting to work more with our social impact group. So if you're, those that aren't familiar, Sesame Workshop is a nonprofit, and we're not just a television show, but we also have a lot of like on the ground indirect services component of our work as well globally. So a lot of rapid response work that we do, a lot of like, work in the field. And so, I want to make sure that we're actually capturing the audience and make sure we're reaching, children, whether it's in classrooms, whether it's in community centers, making sure that our content is reaching as many children as possible. So I've been working very closely with our social impact team to make sure that we're standardizing that process. And yeah, really, really happy to be here.
Love it. Glad to have you here. Last but not least, Vesna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Of course, thank you very much for having me. My name is Vesna. I manage consumer market research at Ferrero for a bunch of different brands, Nutella, Kinder Joy, Kinder Bueno, Kinder Chocolate. So you can already imagine how my day looks like. So a lot of connection with kids and parents, because all these products are not just confectionery brands, but they put smiles on their faces and enable them to bond over the experience. I've been with Ferrero for 9 years, and in terms of projects, the one that we recently did was a huge segmentation study to uncover modern parenting styles in the United States. So, of course, this is not the first time that that someone is doing research on parenting styles. It traces back to 60s and 80s when the 4 fundamental parenting styles have been uncovered. But what we wanted really to see is how did they evolve? How did they progress? How many of them are there right now? What are the key characteristics of them, and what are the key challenges that parents are facing within each parenting style? So that was a very, very interesting study.
Love that. Thank you. What I want to do next is kind of a creative or fun or weird question. I would love for each of you to share a nickname that helps me and the audience understand what your priorities are when you are connecting with parents and families. Anyone already have one that they want to share? Jennifer, I'm looking at you since you started with the intros.
Yeah, mine was Inspector Respecter. And the reason that's the inspector part is I'm a researcher, right? And so I'm always sort of investigating and trying to understand. And the respecter part is just really seeing it through the lens of respecting different kinds of families, different opinions, different thoughts, different ways of thinking about things, and making sure that the language, the portrayals, the kind of things that we're thinking about, that we are able to convey what is good for kids in a way that people can hear it. So it's not so much that we offer vastly different things to different people. We do that when we can, but we also know, based on what kids need and what helps them thrive, it isn't that different across settings and time. The kids still need love, support, boundaries, respect, autonomy. All of those things are still very true, but we need to respect how people arrive there and how that manifests itself in different places.
Love that. Janine, you want to go next with your nickname?
Sure. So I chose Miss Capacity Builder. So in really thinking about sort of similar to what Jennifer was just saying, the uniqueness of communities, individuals, and really building on collaborating and on strengths, as we are also offering evidence-based prevention and intervention, mental health services, or just resources. It really, in order to have them be sustainable and accessible, it really is coming in and working collaboratively with parents, with children, with communities, with individuals in order to build capacity.
Love it. Capacity builder. Demetria, you want to go next?
Yeah, I got one. The parent whisperer. And I say this because a lot of times when talking to parents, especially when they're in their home, there's a lot going on, right? Like they might be holding a toddler, a baby, a dog might be barking. There's just so much going on. And so you have to be able to create rapport and empathize and put yourself in their shoes so that they can easily open up to you and share all of their life journey, like everything from their frustrations to what makes parenting easier for them. And to do that, I believe that it's not easy, but empathizing is what gets you there. And so I would call myself the parent whisperer for that reason.
Michael, what's your nickname?
So I'm like between two. I think it's really, I think about my role as inclusion for all. So I would maybe shift it a little bit to be like the authentic inclusionary. And so, because I think that authenticity is so critical in terms of reflecting to the world what folks want to see. It's not just like what these marketers want to display. It's about how do we understand the nuances and sometimes major things that are really critical to communities that make them feel more seen in our products and features. And I'm a big believer that representation matters. And I think us getting it right, given the platform that we have, is really critical, especially for traditionally underrepresented or minoritized communities.
Rich, what's your nickname? Oh, you're on mute.
You would think I would know this after all these years of online,
We all
right?
do it.
So I was saying that, everyone is familiar with Doctor Who. I would consider myself Dr. Where, just mainly just because, I'm all about focusing, making sure our Sesame Workshop content is where children are and where parents are, right? So, we do have a multi-platform approach to our content. We know that, in this day and age, there is no such thing as one type of content or one screen in a child's life. So we want to make sure that we are creating content that meets the children's needs and meets the parents and families' needs. So whether it's different types of content for different platforms, different different length, etc. Just want to make sure that we have content wherever we meet children. So that's why I would consider myself Dr. Ware.
And last but not least, Vesna.
So I would probably say that I am a happy camper. Because when you think about it, I mean, in today's world, we know this, parents and kids are facing a lot of challenges, a lot of pressures, from the society, financial pressures, the pressures regarding the way they should be brought up, social media pressures, peer pressures, like you can go on and on. But what we try to do, given the brands that we have, is really look at the bright side and look at the positive aspect and help parents as much as a brand can do, correct? Offer a small token of help to parents and kids through bonding, through play, through positive reinforcement. So in that way, I really look at it from the bright side, and I'm privileged and happy that I can do that.
I love what you all have done with this, particularly how it just helps me pull together your priorities with your unique experiences and vantage points. One of the questions I want to kind of dive into first is getting your take on what trend, technology advancement, or even phenomenon is most influential or disruptive when you think about your role today of connecting with parents. Rich, you want to get us started with that one?
Okay, make sure I know what I'm doing here. Yeah, so I would say, it may sound cliche and very, expected, but I would say TikTok, honestly. TikTok is a platform that's become so much more than a social media platform in the minds of parents today. Like it's a media platform. So like you can consume media on it. It's a blogging and a video blogging site. It's even a search engine at times, right? So I think like, this generation of parents are really using that platform as like a trusted source of information for kids' content. And even, as far as like looking at, mommy bloggers and momfluencers. And so like, I think, being able to tap into that audience is very important because it's a very organic place of information. And that, there's a level of authenticity that comes with for the most part, that's come with content or the perceived level of authenticity. So that's something that, we really are making a concerted effort to really tap into from just a general information sharing perspective.
Love that. Any builds to that?
Yeah, I mean, market research is totally different now. I would say when I first started to do research, especially even with parents who had busy schedules, we would travel all over the world. We'd have to be there for a full week. And then, we'd only have a certain window where we could talk to parents in different markets, depending on how the work schedules work in that market. And now, like within 1 week, we could do research in 5 markets all at the same time. Digital ethnographies, like we could get so much content and really learn and connect with them. So I just truly believe that how digital platforms have evolved it's taken market research to another level for us at Ipsos.
Any other thoughts on this one?
I was going to take it, I think positive, and also I think that, not to be a Debbie Downer, oh no, but like I think the flip side of that coin, when it comes to even things like AI or TikTok, like it's a wonderful place for parents to not feel alone and they have access to information. And I just coming from sort of like an evidence-based research perspective, it's like what kind of information? And so there's always this balance of what's out there, how do you trust a resource, how do we connect with parents on like where to go, and so that I, just even from my clinical practice and talking to parents and caregivers, it's like what can I trust, what do I do so-and-so is telling me I just need to be nice to my kid. What does that even mean? Like sometimes things that are really complicated get like bite-sized, and it makes complications seem very simple. And as a caregiver, parent, it can be like, what am I doing wrong when I'm trying these things and it's not working? So I think that's just the flip side of something that can be really powerful. Is also really tricky.
Totally. I want to switch gears a little bit. So there's a recent Ipsos poll about what worries parents today. And there are about 10 things that really rose to the top that I want to share with you all today. Top of the list, mental health, then bullying, sexualization of children, kidnapping and trafficking. Fifth, physical safety in school. Sixth, impacts of technology. Then moral decline. Then the values they learn in school. Then the spread of misinformation online. And then last of that 10 is racial tensions. I'm curious, what most worries parents today that's a priority for your brand? What are you seeing? What are you focusing on? What are you honing in on as you think about worry in parents today? Vesna?
You know, the list that you read, it's, oh my God, it's all black, correct? And it's true, unfortunately, all of these things are impacting parents. And I would add another thing on the top of that, especially in the past 3 or 4 years, and that's a financial situation. Because when you look at the financial concerns are the biggest concerns that parents have, and people in general, parents especially, because they have to take care of their kids. So we as a brand and Ferrero as a company, we cannot address all of these issues, correct? And we cannot tackle all of them individually. What we are trying to do, as I said, is to provide a positive aspect and positive reinforcement and help kids, because we believe that happy kids today make well-rounded adults tomorrow. So as much as one can help in advising parents, in being a consultant to parents, in providing an advice from the brand perspective to help them to deal with these issues and to help them bring up well-rounded adults, that's what we are trying to do, without really getting into solving each of these problems individually.
Jennifer, do you want to weigh in? What most worries parents that's a priority as you do your work?
Yeah, well, I think all of the things that you listed are things that we keep hearing about, and we know that it's not just what parents say is important to them, it's what the academics, the policy folks, like we're looking at this like very holistically, what kids feel themselves. And I think that what we're focused on is really highlighting good content and experiences that help address some of these things. So, for example, we do have relationships with nonprofits where we're looking at curated content that we rise to the top of the Google Play Store, for example, or on YouTube, where we have good content that is highlighted. We have teacher approved programming that really looks at like the good content. And we're also very much looking at ways to create products that protect children. So our whole ethos is, when it comes to kids, is protect, respect, and empower. And I think we are very mindful about doing all the things within product that sort of protect kids from some of the things, some of the mental health challenges, some of the bullying that we talked about. We're very mindful of the parental control tools that we have and how we can use those, and also really providing better experiences for kids, whether that's through the Google Play Store or YouTube. We have a tablet experience called Google Kids Space, which is really high quality content. And so I think we have a responsibility, and I think we're being quite mindful about addressing each of those and being mindful of that, and thinking of kids' development holistically as well.
I'm
Yeah,
curious.
just to build on what Jen just said, you know, we worked a project together. Jen, you may remember this, where we were talking about inclusivity. And I think that just kudos to Jen and her team, because part of the conversation at Google was really understanding not just from the kids' experience, like, you know, times where they might have felt excluded, but also the parents, and just really taking the voice of the parents into consideration Like, what is the concern? What are you most concerned about? So I do think sometimes bringing that voice of the consumer into the organization can help also inspire change and action.
Love that. A recent study from Pew Research states that 40% of parents are extremely or very worried that their children will struggle with anxiety or depression, which really meshes with that Ipsos poll. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this? Janine, you want to get us started here?
Yeah, I mean, it's real, right? When we look at research, 1 out of 5 children go on to have anxiety or depression disorder. And so I think one of the things that we really want to highlight is that, mental health is real, it's common and treatable. There are things that we can do, and as we're thinking about access to mental health, as I was saying before, mental health fitness, how is it that we're creating capacity within schools and organizations to even have just to destigmatize what that means, to have a basis around mental health fitness where we're increasing coping and resilience, sort of starting young, and really just creating good access to not just care, but just information. So that way parents and caregivers also feel like there's a roadmap for helping their children.
No, thank you for that. I'm curious, in what ways are each of you considering diversity in gender, race, ability, even class or sexual identity as you do your work connecting with parents? I'm curious, Michael, as inclusion for all, tell me a little bit about how that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we talked about Janitra and Jen talked a little bit about really listening to our users, our customer base, making sure that we are available. I think Janine was talking about access and making sure that we have a ton of tools. In fact, like I'm gonna go look at this KidSpace thing that I work at the company and I don't know about it, like probably 80% of the things that we do. It's really about how do we provide the tools and features and products that we have to a parent at a critical time for them, right? Like lots of times they're looking for when they're in crisis or when they're like, something happens with their kid, they're bullied, they're going through a mental health crisis, and they want to be there for their kid. And we have all these resources, and yet sometimes we don't always connect the dots for folks. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is think about how can we be of service? How can we show up in moments? And what are the critical factors and what are the indicators that will allow us to be there for certain communities and individuals as they're dealing with challenges, as a parent. And so it's really about also, Jen talked about the relationships that we have with our partners. Sometimes it's through our partners that is the best avenue. We partner with Sesame, we partner with a bunch of different other organizations that lend credibility to these great tools that we have because they're in the space, they're in the communities, they have the relationships with critical key opinion formers. And so it's through those means that we get some of the tools and products out. And we're just trying to think about how do we do it equitably and how do we make it as accessible as possible.
Got it. Any builds there in terms of?
I can chime in. I think we're really trying to be at the forefront and really understand because the landscape is so complex, correct? It's not uniformed anymore. This was like maybe way back when, but not anymore. So in this recent study that I've mentioned, when we explore parenting styles, we really made sure that we talk with parents who parent within different parenting structures. So we talk with two-parent households, single-parent households, LGBT households, and then parents who parent in multi-generational homes. So what was interesting, of course, is, all of these parents, regardless of the parenting structure, have certain issues and problems and challenges that that are the same, that are applicable for all. But then each of these groups has a different set of problems and challenges that is specific to them. So, for example, a single parent usually under more financial pressure than two-family household. Issue with negotiating with the ex. How do you take care of a kid? How do you, when do you take care and who takes care of it, etc. LGBT household, the acceptance issues, pressure that kids are facing in the potential bullying and that is facing in the school. So there are specific challenges within each of these different family structures. And this is what we are really trying to understand so that we can communicate properly in this diversified landscape that now exists.
I love how comprehensive that is and how it just takes so much into account. It also makes me think that given the different structures, the priorities might also change for families. So it's a good reminder. One of the things I'm curious about is what are some of the best practices or the considerations, like inclusion, that you keep top of mind when creating products, digital or in-person experiences, or even services that help families connect, that help them bond? And I know this is such a challenge because when we think about Gen Alpha and when we think about Gen Z, the thing that often rises to the top is that they're highly digital, but also highly distracted. So what do you keep in mind when bringing them together, when you're helping families in this way? Jen, do you want to get us started with this one?
Yeah, I mean, and I know we were chatting about this, for background. To me, it is not necessarily thinking about generational shifts or generational changes. It's about really being grounded in what we know parents and children and teens need to succeed in the world. And some of that change, how it's manifesting, I think changes over time and context, but those still basic child developmental needs are going to be true regardless of what generation they're in. And I think first, just acknowledging what those core needs are and what the importance of those are, and then thinking about maybe how you describe that, how you talk about it, how you what people are interested in it, and you sort of build on it that way. But the first thing you really need to think about is what is good for people. What do we know the science tells us about what is good for people? And then you think about how to position that, or how to describe that. I think that for me makes it still grounded in something like about important, rather than trying a particular gimmick or something that would capture people's attention. So first do the look at the science.
So I'm hearing basic developmental needs are key for these considerations. I'm also hearing that understanding the parenting structure. Anything else rising to the top as you all think about best practice considerations with bringing families together or offering them something that is valuable in this moment? Rich, you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in addition to what Jen said is that, you have to look at the whole child, right? It's not just the academic perspective, it's the whole social emotional perspective, emotional well-being. I think we touched on it before, how important that is at an early age to making sure that you're giving children the language and the tools to make sure that they can express their emotions properly. And I think that's something at Sesame Workshop we're really putting at the forefront and making sure that we're creating content that allows children to express their emotions, whether it's through frustration, sad, angry, whatever, and helping that become like everyday lexicon to children as well as parents. I think that's a great way to bridge the gap between certain generations, because maybe certain generations the parents didn't have that access to that type of language when they were children, right? So I think that's something is really important to not just focus on academic traditional quote unquote hard skills, but also focus on things that are very important to the whole child. And that if you're able to keep those those tenets alive in your content or in your things that you're creating, you can't really go wrong.
Demetria, go for it.
Yeah, no, I was just going to build. So I like that question at the end. You said because the younger generations are so distracted, right? They're digitally distracted. But I kind of see digital as being an enabler in that case of maybe creating that bond and connection. My family and I just recently started doing digital scrapbooking, right? Like who knew? Like instead of doing the old school way of paper and cutting and scissors, and like you could actually do this and it's fun and the boys enjoy it. Or, like I've had parents say they got their kids Fitbits and they all ran together. And then each day now they like do a whole competition about who got the most steps in the day. So, I feel like the younger generations, yes, they are distracted. There's a lot coming at them. But I find that the digital world could actually be an enabler to help create that bond and connection that so many brands and products want to service and provide.
Love that. Janine, what are you seeing in your work from that regard in terms of moments of connection? And, as I think about that term that you introduced to us of mental health fitness, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the key or core aspects as we're thinking about like engagement is just validation, like validating an experience and having people feel seen. And so I think that even when we're thinking about mental health fitness, right, and digital access and how different that's going to look everywhere, I think at the core it's also helping children and parents or caregivers feel seen, feel validated, and I think that's what sort of like is a connector in terms of attachment. So really being able to speak to that experience.
Love that. Thank you. Vesna, I'm thinking about you as the happy camper, and I'm also thinking about the parenting style study. Anything rising to the top for you as we think about moments of connection and what that looks like as you create more happy campers?
That really depends on the parenting style, correct? Like if you're putting that in the context of that research study and on the parenting styles, because the way, for example, our authoritative parent is gonna bond and create moments of connection is vastly different than, for example, the way the gentle parent will do it. So, and there is no right or wrong way, correct? But what is important is to understand what are the ways and what are the differences, both if I think from the brand's perspective so that we can communicate properly to each individual, but then also from the parent perspective, because that helps them better understand themselves and better understand the way that they can establish these moments of connection with their kids.
Love that. No, so helpful and so intuitive. It definitely makes sense. I know that you do so much work and you do so much research, all of you. I'm curious, what do you wish you could learn about parents and families today that you don't already know? Like if you had a magic wand, what would you want to learn about? I see you smiling, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I'd like to know more about is how we can use what we know about, good parent-child interactions and really like do just-in-time kind of supports and understand like at this moment in time, like what would be the best thing for this family to do? Like if everyone's on their devices, you can't get attention or the distraction we were talking about, is there something that we can do to really help support togetherness, conversation, dialogue? And I think trying to figure that out be fascinating to me.
Michael, I saw you wanting to jump in there. What would you want to
Yeah,
know that you don't already know?
it's more of a relationship, I think. It's really about how do we support through the life cycle? How do we build a relationship with the tools and products that we have so that as your child's kind of what Jen was saying, but as your child goes through different experiences, you navigate things differently as a parent, as you as a parent go through things. How do these features align with what you're going through or what your children are going through? I think that's the thing that's the unlock, I guess, is like where do you want to go and how can these tools and features kind of help you get there along the life cycle?
Got it. Rich, what would you want to know that you don't already know?
Yeah, I think Michael really touched on it really important. Is like how does, I guess, essentially, you're a child. Would you like your child to have that you didn't have as a child from a accessibility perspective, right? I think Demetria touched on it where technology is an enabler in a sense, but like what other how else can technology be an enabler from a positive way? I think we hear a lot of times about how, screen time is on the rise and distractions and all that stuff, but where are we, where are the pain points, where are the gaps that we can say, okay, this is where we can build upon the benefits of technology and the benefits of what I didn't have as a child that I want to teach my child in real time. So I think that'd be really interesting to kind of find a way. Is there any concurrent themes that that parents are really talking about that they would like to have equip their child with that they didn't have as a child? And if there any way that we as a company can create content around that.
Vesna, anything you're curious about that you don't
No,
already know?
I really love Jennifer's idea about just-in-time help. If that is available, that would be a great help for everybody.
Demetria, you get to do research across so many different categories and with parents with kids of all different ages. Anything rising to the top for you that if there's a study you could create, what would you create?
Honestly, I would do something around parents and their coping mechanisms as they deal with challenges that they're facing today. And I would layer onto that their intersectionality, their gender, like just getting deeper into even things like I'm thinking about like a mom who's a CEO or a dad who's a stay-at-home dad. Like, oh my gosh, I would love to dive into that and how that could even impact how they interact and cope and deal with all of the challenges that they face. So I just created a study for us.
No, these are some great ideas. I'm curious, everyone talks about Gen Z being the most diverse generation, the fastest growing generation. Inclusion and even activism is often core to their experience. I'm curious, how does this aspect inform the work that you do on their behalf, on their family's behalf, for their parents? How are you thinking about that? Jen, I saw you nod a little bit. You want to jump in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and again, where I sit, I think of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and anyone under 18 is sort of, and I know Gen Z is sort of spreading. I think it's really, in terms of diversity and inclusion, representation is absolutely critical, and it's really not hard to do, and people need to, just like that is something that just seems to me no brainer, and the importance of seeing yourself represented in products and content and experiences. And I think just really being able to connect with people needs to make them feel that their opinions are valid, that you thought about them, that you've talked to them, that you've included people with them. And so to me, it is just continually critical to do that. All generations, the youth tend to be more active and passionate, I think, than as you get older. So I think that's not so new. It's just making sure that we're hearing their voices, we're including them, we're creating with, not for. Our advisors tell us that a lot. And so just really making sure that they're in the conversation with us for everything that we do.
Can I maybe add on to that, because I think that's spot on, and right, it's all of that and making sure that folks feel validated and seen in our products, but also I think we have I personally think Google and some of other folks have the responsibility to also showcase that there are other sides of the narrative and other stories. I think we talk about the polarity that we live in right now. I think we're part of the problem in terms of how we got there. We also have the opportunity to be part of the solution. I think, Sesame has done a phenomenal job of, becoming more diverse and showing other perspectives for kids and being there, and the pivot to mental well-being has been incredible for them. I think we need to take some more ownership and understanding of how we help see other sides and understand that there is validity in other perspectives, and kind of break through some of the echo chambers that we can create with the technology that we have.
I love that, because Jennifer was talking about the opportunity to be a mirror. And then Michael came in and talked about the opportunity to be a window. And that is so important when we think about media, when we think about so many things in our world today, windows and mirrors. I'm curious next, we talk about, you know, many of you work in marketing, strategy, research, communications. What's the most unique or effective method of gathering consumer or business insights that you've come across when prioritizing parents today, knowing some of the challenges that they have and just the diversity in the landscape? Anyone want to jump in there?
Yeah, I can start. Well, first of all, I think we live really in exciting times when it comes to research. I think Jim mentioned it, they said at the beginning. So I don't think that there is one single universal way to gather the information. It's how you put together everything that is available. And you now talk consumer insights, which is, in my mind, your traditional research techniques. But then you talk shopper insights, including commerce, media insights, digital, TV, social, AI. It's a big thing, how it helps us to gather insights more effectively and efficiently, do it yourself. So you have such a widespread quantity of tools that are at your disposal. But I think when you really get insights is in integrating them. So your ability to integrate the insights from different methodologies, to storytell, to create actionable recommendations is what makes it impactful.
I love that. I saw a lot of head nodding.
I totally agree. Totally agree. I thought about a study where I got to go shopping, you guys, with a husband and wife. So just imagine what this was like. The wife was like, "You're always rushing me when I'm ready to look, but we're at Home Depot. You want to take your time." It was so funny to watch them. But we paired that conversations that the couples were having about shopping and what they needed for their family with social media listening. And in that, we were able to look at hashtags that came up with parents talking. We were looking at like community groups and what was important to them and what was coming up on that same topic. So I do believe you're exactly right. Like I don't think there's like one unique way, but it's the intersection of bringing it all together, integrating it, and being able to tell a full story that could best, I guess, get action to happen and get your team moving along. But there's so much out there and so many ways to learn from parents. I just think that the opportunities are endless if you could pull the insights together.
No, love that. Rich, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was so fascinated about what you shared early on around social impact. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of the work that Sesame Workshop does outside of TV, outside of content creation that might be digital or streaming or on TV. Can you share a little bit about, the classroom, you said, I think community centers, that type of work that you do, and how you're able to reach a lot of audiences or connect with a lot of parents and families in faraway places? I'd love to just hear a little more so we could bring that into the conversation.
Yeah, sure. I mean, our social, impact team are amazing at what they do, right? Like they're creating content on like a very like quick response content, need-based content, and not just in the US, but across the globe, right? So from anywhere, from South Africa to Rwanda to Palestine. So we're definitely very, very in tune again with that whole child and what the child needs, right? It's not anything from a political perspective. It's really from like what are the needs of the children in a certain place, right? So, and a lot of times, a lot of these places don't have access to traditional media, but there's still a need for the messaging and the content from like an emotional well-being perspective. And so, we make efforts to work closely with local governments, local agencies, local NGOs that help us to spread our information and get our information in, whether it's community centers, classrooms, et cetera. And so that's a whole like process, right? From, that we're doing, and we find it very important. And the need is there, always going to be there, because no matter where you are in the world, a child is a child is a child, and a child needs to be safe and needs to understand like there are there's content that is for them, right? So really, and again, my role is really just making sure that we are optimizing our strategies in that space, right? Making sure that we're looking at the most feasible ways that we can create content, put content in front of children across the globe, and that's the need that's always going to be there, and I'm really excited and proud to do that work.
No, it definitely sounds amazing. And I love that, that there's so many things that brands can be a part of today. What they do in the marketplace from a social impact perspective, from a consumer perspective, also what they do in the workplace. I'm curious, more and more what organizations do holistically, even down to how they treat employees or what their leadership looks like, is becoming important for consumers. I'm curious what, either from your own organizations or even outside, so it doesn't have to be limited to something that you might be working on or touching, but I'm curious what ways are you seeing parents and families valuing what brands are doing in a very holistic perspective, or maybe in more unexpected ways? Any thoughts there? Vesna, you want to jump in there?
Yeah. I was just thinking, and it's not probably only about parents. It's about everybody, correct? Because people are just in modern societies, Western societies especially, are mandating that the companies behave in a socially responsible way, correct? So there was just a recent study that we conducted here with our corporate affairs department that talks about 5 different things that are most important when it comes to the reputation that the company builds, correct? So you have things like offering products that meet my values, operates fairly and responsibly, communicates clearly and transparently, cares for well-being of the employees, supports good causes. So these are the things that people are expecting, correct? Parents included. So it's not an option. The companies need to behave in that way to earn respect and trust, and at the end of the day, dollars of people who are buying their products.
Are there brands or organizations or entities that you go to for inspiration, or better yet, where do you go for inspiration when you think about connecting with parents, when you think about connecting with families? Jen, you're smiling.
Yeah, I mean, Sesame is the standard on that. I mean, I'm a little biased. I was there, but it's true. I mean, you say you work at Sesame, or you say you have anything to do with Sesame, people love that. I also would say Lego is another one. And again, these are nonprofits, right? So, or the Lego Foundation. There's a foundation, but I guess Lego is not a nonprofit. But I think when you are very clear about what your values are, if it's about uh, education or learning or play, I think those are things that parents uh, trust. Google is known very much for trust and safety, and so it's not as much fur and fun here as it was at Sesame, but I still think it has this. We still have sort of a reputation of being, really trying to care about safety and information and well-being. So I think, but yes, for parents, I would say Sesame and Lego.
So here's the last question, and I would love to hear from each of you. What advice do you have for anyone, brands, people, firms, looking to better connect with parents today or families? Do you want to get us started, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's listen more than you're talking. I think that a lot of companies speak from I think Google has been guilty at times of this, and speaking from a position of education and power and whatever. And I think we're better off when we do more listening than we do talking. And I think that's something that Sesame gets right, not to keep, but like I think you get that right. I think you have your ear to the ground of what the parents, the shifting landscape of being a parent is. And I think you respond to that. And I think more companies have an opportunity to do that, including us.
Janine?
Yeah, I still my answer. I was gonna say also just valuing lived experience, and I think it's like listening, but also I think we're always balancing, yes, what research says, but really valuing lived experience too. So really connecting from that lens.
Love that. Rich, what advice do you have for anyone looking to better connect with parents today or families?
I would say be authentic. I think, this generation of parents and just, consumers in general, they can smell the BS a mile away. I think, folks are really in tune to, or I wouldn't say skeptic, but they're very wary of like false claims or false actions. And I think, the best way to be to win over or to be up and show up in the lives of parents is to be authentic, through your content, through your messaging, and be consistent about it as well. So I think that's something that has to be is very important in nowadays, because it's not something that you can fake.
Vesna, what advice would you have?
So first, I think you should be driven by a compelling vision. So why do you want to do certain things, and how you are going to make this world a better place for parents and kids? The second, I agree with Rich, be credible and authentic. Try to understand who they are, and then try to understand who you are and be yourself. Be true self in any situation. And then lastly, be in it for the long run, correct? There are no shortcuts. So you have to be transparent and honest, because that's the only way how you're going to build the integrity in the long run.
Jen, you're up next.
I would say know your why. Simon Sinek did a great presentation on this. If you Google it, you will be able to find it all over. But it's really know your why and make sure that why matches up with what the needs are of the people that you're connecting with. And if they're and it must be, as everyone else is saying, authentic, real, and not just trying to pitch an idea. It's got to be real, and you've got to know why you're doing what you're doing in the best interest of those parents.
Last but not least, Demetria, what's your piece of advice?
I totally agree with what you guys are saying. And I think in order to create that authenticity, you have to bring in their voice. Like they have to be a part of the conversation. And there's lots of ways to do that so that you can create that empathy muscle. But in order to really make decisions strategically that are best for parents, you have to know who they are. And it's not enough just to say, oh, I'm a parent too. You really have to understand, like, what is a single mom with low incomes life like versus maybe affluent 2 household income parents life like, like, so really deep diving and bringing in their voice into the conversation, I think really is a game changer.
You all were phenomenal. This was a fantastic conversation. I literally took 3 pages of notes. So thank you for your time and for sharing your genius and your experiences. Really enjoyed the conversation. Ellen, I will pass it back to you.
Oh, wow. I would just like to echo what Janelle said. Thank you to our wonderful guests for today's really candid discussion. And thank you all for joining us. You will receive an email with a direct link to today's recorded presentation. That may be a few days from now, but be on the lookout for that. Of course, at any time, please reach out to us directly. That now concludes today's amazing webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.